Why, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Good Friends and Better Enemies podcast. My name is Tyrone, and as always, I'm joined by Jay. Jay, how the hell are you today?
I'm doing good, sir. How you doing, man?
You know what? It's been a bit of a week, but all things considering, I'm doing pretty damn good. I can't complain.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I'm going pillar to post all week this week. But speaking of this week, we got some really great feedback regarding our first attempt at this last week. The episode that we
Yeah,
did about the 1997 Survivor Series was a pretty polarizing episode, to say the very least.
yeah, I fully expected to be torn apart on my main event rebooking there, but funnily enough, the only negative feedback that I got all revolved around Jerry the King Lawler and me taking him off. So I guess people care more about Lawler than they do Bret Hart these days.
Well, maybe if we'd had a kiss my foot match or something like that, we would have made everybody whole. Yeah, I got some great feedback as well. I think people really appreciated how deep you got into the rebooking of the angles. Sometimes they didn't agree with what you rebooked, but they really appreciated that you took the time to come up with different scenarios and really tell a really great story. So we're going to attempt to get better at that every week. We're learning as we go here with all of these podcasts. So as we go along, we're going to get more and more detail, and we really appreciate the feedback from everybody too, folks. When you send us some feedback or you take the time to give us a comment, we definitely pay attention to it. We definitely take note of it. We're going to try to do better for you each and every week.
Absolutely. And right off the bat, I just want to do something that I should have done last week and totally forgot. That kick-ass song that you're hearing right off the get-go. I just want to give a shout out to Antics for letting us use their song Suffer in Silence. Thanks a lot there, boys. And also, just got to give a shout out to my lovely, beautiful wife for creating our logo for all of our social medias.
Yeah, I got to say, kudos to your wife. I don't know if we're saying her name on air or not, but I just wanted to give her a very heartfelt thank you. That logo looks absolutely incredible. I was just blown away by how detail oriented it was. So I have to really give a big mad props, as they used to say, to your wife, and as well the band. I believe you said it's Antics. They are phenomenal. They have a great sound for our podcast, and if you have a chance, check out the rest of their music on YouTube.
Yeah, it's Antics with two X's because, as I like to say, one was taken.
Right. Okay, perfect.
But yeah, I guess this is the point now where we would start talking about this week in history. And I mean, with Survivor Series looming and it being Taker's 30th, we kind of thought we would just talk about Undertaker this week and talk about one or two moments that we each thought were his best. So, Jay, do you want to start it up and give us what you thought were one of his best moments?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the kind of incredible coinciding of the two events, you saw November 22nd, 1990 was the day that he debuted. And then, of course, November 22nd, 2020 is the day that he's going to be making his final farewell, by the sounds of it. So it was very apropos that he would be our number one topic of discussion for this week in wrestling history. I do want to say that typically we would do more than one piece of business or piece of news for this segment, but the last couple of weeks have just sort of coincided with some pretty big historical events that we both feel deserve a little bit more time get given to it and allotted to it. There's so many memories that I can think of with the Undertaker. I absolutely love the character. I think he's one of the most pathetic and most incredibly diverse characters that we've ever seen in the history of the business. I also think that he has transcended the business and tweaking his character to make him somebody who is incredibly accessible to all age ranges, all different groups. He's probably the most over guy as a cross section of the business in the last 30 years. Every generation seems to just gravitate towards him and love him. So
Yeah,
specific
I
moments
think
are.
in almost a weird way, sorry to cut you off there, in almost a weird way, he's kind of the Madonna of wrestling. Like, just constantly reinvents himself, and new generations keep finding him and loving him.
Yeah, I can't agree with that more. I think that specific moments are kind of difficult for us to pinpoint because there's just so many of them. I definitely have to talk about his feud with Mankind. I think it's probably his number one feud that he ever had in his career. All the different matches that he had, specifically the stuff in '96, I think was phenomenal. You had those 4 matches they had on pay-per-views, a couple of really, really innovative matches there as well. And then, of course, the infamous Hell in the Cell match in '98. But I think for my money, that's probably the best feud of his career. And then maybe Shawn Michaels being a close second. What do you think, Tyrone?
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Mankind feud because on my television right now, I have Survivor Series 96 on, and that's the match that's on right now.
Yeah, that was. Go ahead. Sorry.
But I'm not going to go Mankind or Sean because I kind of figured that's where you were going to go. So I decided to go his feud with Yokozuna. I thought that was. I thought it was great because that was right at the height of my childhood fandom was that casket match at Rumble '94. And I'll never forget going back to school, and we would always write in our journals over weekend, like what we did and if we did anything fun. And I wrote about that match and how it took 10 different people to put him in the casket. And my teacher thought that my parents were showing me some kind of satanic nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. When he levitated and all that kind of stuff, it was just crazy. I just want to go back real quick and just clarify something that my mic cut out a bit there. When at the beginning of my discussion of The Undertaker, I used the word prophetic. I meant to say prophetic. I apologize. I hope nobody thinks I said pathetic, because that's certainly not what I meant to say, but just wanted to clarify that real quick.
I don't think anybody who knows you would ever think that you thought The Undertaker was pathetic. Let's be real here, bud.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's the greatest character of all time. He's my favorite for sure. His in-ring work, too. I mean, we talk about his character, and we talk about all the different iterations of the character, all the different kinds of gimmicks that he's tweaked over the years. I mean, you look at the original Deadman, and then, of course, the Biker Taker, the American Badass Taker. But a lot of people kind of sleep on his in-ring work. And I think that it's very important to note that he is a phenomenal worker. The things that he's able to do for his size is absolutely unbelievable. Topes over the top rope, walking the top rope. Just incredible.
But he's also very smart with when he does those things because he works like a big man most of the time. But then out of nowhere, he busts out these crazy dives over the top rope. And you realize you almost forget that that's a 6'10", 320-pound man jumping out like that.
Because he's agile like a cat as well, which is incredible. I mean, he has all the tools to have been the superstar that he is. He's absolutely tremendous. So I think for those folks that, love the character but maybe don't have an appreciation quite as much for his in-ring work, I would put his in-ring work up there with anybody's. And I think that that's what makes him such an incredible character: his commitment to the gimmick, to the character, as well as, of course, the in-ring work, all coming together. I can't remember, other than a couple of big men, I can't remember him having a lot of bad matches. Obviously, the Giant Gonzaleses and King Kong Bundys of the world. But as for the rest, I don't see a lot of negativity in his repertoire or in his track record.
I mean, you forgot Sid. We how can we forget his terrible matches with Sid? I know you're going to say that there were some merits to it and this and that, but the main event of WrestleMania 13 was absolute trash, and you will never sway me on that.
I'm not going to disagree with you. I don't think it was a very good match either. I will say it was better than the Giant Gonzalez or the King Kong Bundy match. And I know that's not saying much. Even his match with Kevin Nash, Diesel, at WrestleMania 12, I thought was a pretty good match. One of Diesel's best matches in quite a while. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree with you that he was good. But then you even look at, like, the match with Nash was good. But you look at later in his career, and he still got sidelined with a whole bunch of horrible matches. Like the Great Khali feud was not good. He had some really terrible ones with the Big Show. And that's nothing against against Show, because he's a decent worker too. But sometimes they just didn't have the chemistry.
Yeah, well, it's Nathan Jones and guys like that too. So he would sometimes get stuck with big men, Heidenreich and guys like that, just for the sake of for something different, or if the gimmicks kind of coalesced in some way, it kind of made sense for them to be put together in some kind of feud. Yeah, I do agree with you. He's had some stinker feuds, but the matches themselves, probably, I would dare say, 9 times out of 10, his matches were quite good. So I do have to give him credit for that, for sure.
I gotta just completely disagree with you there. 9 times out of 10, I think you're wrong. I'd give him a 6 or 7 out of 10 that he puts on a great show, and that's no fault to him because it takes two to tango. But he's had a lot of stinkers in my mind.
Okay, well, yeah, you're probably right. Let's put it this way then. Let's say that at the very least, Taker can get as much out of anybody as anybody can. So if the guy's like Flair used to do back in the day, like when you have a guy who's a mediocre worker at best, these guys have an ability to at least get their very best out of them, and they're able to protect them and by extension protect the match and the gimmick. So I would you'd have to give Taker that, at least, that he has the ability to pull out the best out of people.
Oh, absolutely. And I would, honest to God, say that he is in my top 3 of best big man of all time. I know you're going to say number 1, but I'm always going to put Andre and Bam Bam ahead of him.
Yeah, that's fair. To tell you the truth, I don't really look at him as a big man, like put him in that particular field. I understand what you're saying, but I think that he's transcended all that. So for me, I don't really feel as though he needs to be qualified as a big man wrestler. I think he's just an all around phenomenal performer. But anyhow, I think that pretty much. Sorry, go ahead.
There's a reason why he's called the Phenom.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I can't wait to see what happens at the Survivor Series this Sunday. I can't wait to find out what they're going to do with him, if he's going to be inserted into a match, if he's going to be just given the proper farewell. What do you think's going to happen?
Okay, so, well, I was just about to ask you the exact same thing. What do you think is going to happen? I see one of two things happening. I see either he becomes the last member of Team SmackDown and gets his last match, and that's it. They go out. I know that was brought up in the past, and I kind of shit all over it, but the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. Or I see them bringing out all the remaining members of the BSK and a whole bunch of legends and kind of giving them a proper send-off like they did the night after Mania 24 with Flair.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Now, the only thing that concerns me with that is just how many people can you really bring in realistically, especially with what's going on in the world right now. If you're able to do it and get all the people there that need to be there, then definitely I'm with you. But if it's just going to be like a hodgepodge or smattering of people here and there, I think it's better off to wait for something like that. I do kind of feel like this might actually end up being, as much as I think that he might be done, and there's a big part of me that thinks that he is, I also think there's a small chance that maybe this is going to set up his final match, maybe at Mania or something like that. He's going to come out and be ready to finally retire, and then somebody is going to interrupt him, and that'll set up the final feud. Maybe that's what's going to happen. It's really hard to say every time.
I really don't want to see that at all. I want this to be the end for him. I love the character.
Yeah, I kind of feel as though this would be kind of bookending so perfectly.
Yeah, like the date lines up perfectly, 30 years to the day. Like, you can't write this anymore than it already has been written.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I don't know about you, but I think that we're kind of done with talking about Mr. Taker there, and maybe we should move on to the actual event that we're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we got a chance to cover it and talk about it a bit. I'm sure we'll talk about it again in coming weeks, and probably after this episode and after the Survivor Series, we'll touch on it again, what they actually end up doing. So on to the Survivor Series we go.
All right. Well, this week, ladies and gentlemen, we have a doozy for you. My buddy Jay has agreed to graciously rebook the Survivor Series 2003, which took place November 16th, 2003 from the American Airlines Center in Dallas, Texas. I don't know about you, Jay, but this one wasn't the easiest one for me to watch.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff on here. Let's put it this way. This card for me went through a paper shredder, sorry. And I rebooked it. I've only kept one match the same. I thought it was a pretty decent event in terms of some of the in-ring work. Some of the matches we saw I thought were quite good, but I found that this particular era of the company, especially going deep into the brand split at this point, about a year and a half in, I felt that this era was a little cold for me. 2003 was a little hit and miss for me in terms of my enjoyment of the product.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, I think you nailed it right earlier when you said that the in-ring work, some of it was fantastic, because that's kind of just 2003 as a whole. You look at the year and you have Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle main eventing WrestleMania 19, but it's also the same year where we had Vince McMahon fight his own daughter like a week before she actually was getting married.
Yeah, that's definitely something to look back on, sort of with a black eye. 2003. You look at some of the angles that have come up. I mean, starting off the year with Booker T and Triple H, which a lot of people think was extremely offensive. And then, of course, you had Zach Gowen there in the summer of 2003. They sort of were taking advantage of the fact that he was one-legged and sort of making light of the fact that he was a one-legged wrestler. Now, he ended up getting his comeuppance at the end and all that kind of thing. But at the same time, just in poor taste in my mind. And then, of course, as you said, the Stephanie and Vince, I think at one point they were pushing towards maybe Vince being in love with Stephanie, and then having had sex or something like that was maybe something that was pitched in a creative meeting, but was killed flat. So just some...
Actually, I'm pretty sure that I think that came later on. I think that they actually wanted to pitch that Vince was going to be the father of her child.
Oh, okay. Well, I can't remember the exact timeline. You're probably right. That would have been around 2006 or something.
Yeah, because it was on a Saturday night's main event. It was during the whole Vince and Shane versus Sean and God feud.
Was it Sean and God, or was it Sean and Sean and Triple H?
Oh, geez, I'm not going to touch that one right now.
Let's just say 2006.
Sounds good.
Oh, I see where you're going with that. No, I'm not trying to refer to Triple H as God.
I mean, you never know. He did show up during the New Generation, and we all know that is your favorite era. So, for all I know, you could just be a giant Triple H mark and want to start a religion dedicated to him.
Yeah, I do seances with candles and leather jackets with sledgehammers pretty frequently. So, I think you're pretty much hit the nail on the head with that one, pal.
Oh, well, that's pretty much what I do. All right, well, we're going to get into the show here. Going into this show, all the championships, not many championships were on the line, but all the champions are as follows. You have the World Tag Team Champions as the Dudley Boys, the WWE Tag Team Champions as the Basham Brothers. The Cruiserweight Champ was Tajiri. The Intercontinental Champ was Rob Van Dam. The United States Champion was Bill Goldberg. The Women's Champ was Molly Holly. The WWE Champ was Brock Lesnar. And the World Champ was Goldberg. I can't believe how many titles there were at this point. It was just ridiculous.
I'm sorry, I nodded off there. Did you finish the list of champions?
Yeah, and now I need a glass of water because Jesus Christ, I'm out of breath.
That's almost as many champions as there are now. I mean, with the 24/7 title, and I don't know. If you ask me, I think that we were way better off back in the day when we had a heavyweight champion, intercontinental, and a tag champion, maybe a European as well, but that's about it. I didn't need, like, WCW even in the mid-90s. They had tag team champions. They had a television champion, a U.S. champion, world champion. I just think that it devalues the titles when every other person has one.
I just need to take a moment and apologize for my partner there because he forgot to say the women's champion, and I'm not a sexist piece of garbage like he is. So, rah, let's go women.
What? How am I sexist when I'm talking about the early 90s? Who was I guess, yes, you're right. There was a women's champion. It was so infrequent, the women's champions in the 90s. You had one for a little while, then you didn't. Then you had one, then you didn't. So don't call me out on that stuff, man. That's not fair.
All's fair in love and war, my babe.
Yeah. Well, good friends, better enemies, my friend.
All right. Well, shall we get into the rebooking there, my friend?
Let's do it, pal.
All right, so the first match on the pre-show was Tajiri defeating Jamie Noble for the Cruiserweight Champ. I don't know if we rebooked that one, but I took all the time to mention who was Cruiserweight Champion, so I figured I should bring that up.
Yeah, I didn't bother rebooking that one because, in my mind, it doesn't exist on the card.
Totally fair. So we're going into the card, and our first match is Team Angle, which is Kurt Angle, Bradshaw, Chris Benoit, Hardcore Holly, and John Cena taking on Team Lesnar, Brock Lesnar, A-Train, Big Show, Nathan Jones, and Matt Morgan. What do you got for me, bud?
All right. Well, I'm actually going to change it up completely, with the exception of a couple of people. I am going to do a traditional 4-on-4 Survivor Series elimination match with Team Cena, consisting of John Cena, Bradshaw, London, and Kendrick versus the Big Show, Mark Henry, Jamie Noble, and Tajiri.
Okay. I'm not hating that. I love the addition of London and Kendrick. I've always thought that they are one of the most underrated tag teams. I will say, I already hate the fact that you changed it to a 4-on-4 because I prefer the 5-on-5.
I tend to prefer the 5-on-5 as well, but just for the purposes of this card and the way I rebooked it, I went with the 4-on-4 just because it made more sense with the flow of the card. I will say about this particular match, as I've rebooked it, you have Team Cena versus Team Big Show. Obviously, at WrestleMania 20, a few months later, we were going to have Cena versus Big Show for the U.S. title. So it made sense to start kind of getting a slow burn on that feud a bit for me. I loved having London and Kendrick in the match. For me, I sort of tend to think about this match kind of like the way it used to be back in the day when you'd have a couple of superstars, like say you'd have the Rockers with the Ultimate Warrior and somebody else. You'd have a couple of bigger guys, more marquee heavyweight guys, and then you'd have a couple of workers in the ring as well. So that's sort of where I tried to get to Jamie Noble and Tajiri. I love the match. I think the in-ring work would have been phenomenal. I kind of see Cena going over here, maybe with Mark Henry being the one to take the pinfall after Big Show kind of just lets Mark Henry take the pinfall, maybe gets himself disqualified. I just like the idea of Big Show being a coward or being a cowardly heel here. And then at that point, you can build up the tension going forward to the Cena and Big Show match at WrestleMania. But definitely, we'd see some phenomenal in-ring work with Tajiri and Noble, as well as London and Kendrick.
So you're having the Doctor of Thugonomics be the sole survivor in this one?
I don't think he would be the sole survivor. I just think he'd pick up the pin. I'd like to see maybe Cena and London or Kendrick be remaining, because I love the idea of the David versus Goliath storyline, especially with, say, a Brian Kendrick going back and forth with the Mark Henry and just selling to the moon for him. And then eventually... Sorry, go ahead.
Here's my only issue with that is we've seen them try to give Brian Kendrick a push. Like, he was in that championship scramble match a couple years later, and it never worked. I get what you're trying to do here, but I hate it. I already don't like this. I don't like that John Cena is captaining the team right at the beginning, and we're already going into Super Cena. He's getting the pin over people. The rest of the team is abandoning. No, not a fan.
Fair enough. I think that it's accomplishing the goals they're trying to accomplish. I think that Cena is going to be, he's already has the jetpack attached to him at this point. He's going to be going over at WrestleMania, and then the following year's WrestleMania is going to win the title. So they already see a lot in him. He's over quite a bit. Kendrick or London, I didn't say specifically which. Maybe it would be London then instead. You could have those guys bouncing around the ring for the big guys. I just think it would add some excitement to the match. I understand your point, but I think that pardon my French here, but the chicken shit heel Big Show would add some credibility to John Cena going forward. And then as we go, you could tell that story.
No, I totally get where you're going for there, but what I would have done if it were this match and it were me, I would have almost had all the bigger guys get into a big brawl, and you just are left with the 4 cruiserweights, and you let the 4 of them just tear the house down.
Yeah, I would love to do that as well. And I understand that it's fantasy booking, but I also want to do it based in some semblance of reality. And I just don't see Cena or Big Show being eliminated early and them leaving the floor to London and Kendrick or Noble and Tajiri. I absolutely would love to see that. And I'm not trying to book the way that I would love to see it booked. But at the same token, I just think realistically with the other people in the match that it wasn't something that was going to happen. That's why I wanted to keep one marquee guy as well as one crazy worker in there as well with the other members of the other opposite team.
All right, man. I get what you're going for there. I love how we're already disagreeing on the first match. I feel like
Yeah.
we're in for a bit of a night here.
Absolutely.
You got anything else left on that one, or are we going on to the next?
No, I think that's good. I like that one. So I think that we're off to a good start here.
All right. Well, next up, we had Molly Holly defending her women's championship against Lita. I don't know if you remembered that there were women on this card, Jay. Please tell me that they're still on it.
Yes, of course they are. I don't know why you think I'm such a chauvinist here, but I'm not at all. I've changed this up to, this is going to have a stip, and it's going to be similar to a stip that's on the card later in the program. We're doing a title versus career match, and we're going to have Molly Holly defend against Dallas's own Jacqueline. We're going to have a really, really high-spirited match. It's not going to go long. We're going to go about 7 or 8 minutes with Molly getting a lot of the offense early on. We're going to have Jacqueline make a really, really solid comeback. And then eventually she's going to hit a roll-up for the pin and get the pin and win the title, setting up some great fanfare for her being in her hometown, winning the title over Molly. She's not going to hold it very long, probably drop it on SmackDown a couple of weeks later, but it's just going to get that pop. It's going to get her to stay on the card as well. I definitely would like to see Jacqueline be more utilized in this time frame, in this era. And I think that the two of them would have had a phenomenal match in this time.
Okay, here's what I see as an issue in this one right now. Nothing against Jacqueline. She is a fantastic worker, very underrated, should have had a longer run with a title. I don't think that in 2003 there was anything whatsoever that Jacqueline was going to be on a pay-per-view winning a title. I don't think it was ever in the cards. I get that you're going for the Dallas hometown thing, but also because you keep wanting to rebook it with what's going on and a little bit of what you think would actually happen. They never want to put the hometown hero over, so she would have been buried.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I think that it's a bit of a swerve in that sense, because then you kind of have a similar stip later on in the show, and that goes, the way it goes. So I kind of think that, especially because she's a hometown Dallas girl, also a lot of the times you'll see that they, especially with the women's division in this time, they did sort of have this merry-go-round of different challengers. It wasn't always the same 2 or 3 people in the title scene. They switched it up quite a bit. They'd elevate someone, bring them into the title picture, then they'd drop off for a bit. I don't see any harm right now in this time frame with Molly doing the job to Jacqueline quickly and then getting the title back. I think it'd be a fun little segment, fun little spot for the show, a feel-good moment for the hometown crowd. You get a little good, solid match with a couple of really solid workers, and then you move on to something else down the road. But I just kind of feel like this would have been a nice way to go back then.
So was Lita back from her injury at this point, or are you still keeping her on the shelf?
I'm keeping her on the shelf at this point. I mean, she would probably be returning imminently, but no, she wouldn't have been involved in this match. I don't think that you needed her. I think you could have saved her for something else. There was so much on this show already that I just sort of, especially the way I've booked it, that I feel like having that as I said, that feel good moment every once in a while. You get one of those moments, and it's especially for a hometown crowd. I think it's a great little moment, and we've all experienced them here and there watching the business. So I'm quite satisfied with this one.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, if you did the feel-good moment, you could have changed this to a 4-on-4 or 5-on-5 elimination match and had Jackie get the win there. Then there's no title.
Yeah, no, you're right. I have a lot of 4-on-4s coming up, so I just didn't feel the need to add one more. I like to have a couple of 1-on-1s on here as well.
All right, cool. Are you done with that one? Are we going on to the next?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that one.
All right, one that I'm very curious to see how you rebooked is Kane and Shane McMahon in a goddamn ambulance match. Jay, oh, please tell me that this one changed.
This did change. I kept the match in terms of the two competitors. This was a blow-off for their feud. I changed it from an ambulance match to a Texas death match. Now, I like to change the stip. I really like the story here. Shane avenging his mom. It's a relatable and simple story to tell. I think the Texas death match is so underutilized. It's actually a very protected gimmick, which I think is so rare in today's, even 2003 or even today, especially. So to see this stip get pulled out every once in a while, I'm a big fan of it. It's a really great blow off as well. So for those of you that aren't familiar, a Texas death match is similar to a last man standing, except you have to achieve a pinfall first. So Kane or Shane would have to get a pin on their opponent and then have to get the 10 count afterwards. Kind of adds some great drama to the match when you have to wait to see whether or not you've won after the pinfall. Also falls count anywhere. So you can do a lot of the outside stuff too. I do think that in this era, we had a lot of backstage stuff going back to the Attitude Era and, even up to this point. So I would have stayed a little bit more away from the backstage stuff. That really irked me a lot of times, especially if you've been you're there in attendance. How many times, a night are you going to have the action backstage where you're missing a lot of it? So I would have stayed away from that. And I would have still had Kane go over. I like the idea of Kane going over, finishing off Shane. I think that the feud had run its course at this point, but also I think that you had to keep Kane strong as well. He had been rebranded back in June when he took the mask off at Madison Square Garden. So I think that Kane was on a real high trajectory right now, and keeping him strong was key, and Shane McMahon helped to get him over in that sense.
I don't know what the hell to say right now. We haven't seen a Texas death match in how long, and you want to waste it on these two?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what else to say. I think that is the dumbest goddamn thing you could have done. You waste a Texas death match on Kane and Shane McMahon. I get what you went for, 100%. I love the fact that for some reason this match itself stayed on the card, but with a different stip of all the other ones on the damn thing. But I hate it. I genuinely hate the fact that you went with a Texas death match with Kane and Shane McMahon. I get they're in Texas, but I feel like a Texas death match should have somebody from Texas in the goddamn match.
Okay, well, I think that's a little silly. I don't think that you just pull out a Texas death match every time there's a Texan on the card. I don't think that.
I think it's silly that you pull it out when they're in Texas and it's Kane and Shane McMahon. I'd rather they pull it out when it's a goddamn Texan than these two in Texas.
No, I get what you're saying. I understand it completely. I just feel like this match needed to be this feud needed to be blown off. The ambulance match was I felt like they'd done that stip quite a few times. It didn't call for a cage. They hadn't had any outside interference, so we didn't need a cage match. Didn't need a Hell in the Cell. Certainly weren't going to do a ladder match for any reason. So I just feel like the Texas death match fits here. It's in Dallas. I get what you're saying. It's one of my favorite steps. I don't know, and I'm actually rather pleased that we don't see them very often. I don't know why.
I'm not knocking the stip at all. I think the stip is fantastic, like on its own, but not for these two. Just do a goddamn last man standing. It's kind of Shane McMahon's thing. You don't need to call it a Texas death match because then they would ruin that stip, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know if that would ruin the stip. I think that you see it so infrequently that I don't think that it would really make that much of a difference. I get what you're saying. I definitely think Kane would still need to go over, as I said. Shane would do a great sell job for him. You could do a lot of blood and guts in this one if you wanted to. And then, you have Kane go on to bigger and better things. But Shane McMahon isn't a regular guy at this point. He's there here and there. He's not a weekly in-ring competitor. So it was right for him to do the job. I get what you're saying, why you don't like it. I definitely think it's better than the ambulance match. And I would have really liked to have seen a Texas death match. I hadn't seen one in so long. So I understand why you don't like it. But at the same token, I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, that's fair. I know I'm not going to sway you on this one. I think it's fucking stupid. You think it's great. I guess we just move on to the next one at this point. Because
wait a minute. I don't think it's great. Let's put it that way. I like that I changed it to this. I like the idea of the match, and I like the idea of this being the match that blows off the feud. But let's call a spade a spade. I mean, Kane versus Shane was never going to be, match of the year. So I just like that I tweaked it a bit, but I understand what you're saying. You would have rather have seen a Texas death match utilized on a couple of different guys or different workers. I get it.
Just put Goldust in the match, and then it's a Texas death match, and I'm fucking happy. I don't want to see it with Kadish. I'm getting hot just talking about this. You are doing a good job today, man.
Well, we agree to disagree, but
all right, I'm moving on. I'm done talking about this one. We're going to the Basham Brothers taking on Los Guerreros for the WWE Tag Championship. Did you fuck this one up too? The Guerreros are Texans. Are we in a Texas Dex match?
Yeah, we're in a Tex-Mex death match.
Yeah, okay. No. I'm getting a little hot. My words got... All
right. Settle. We have a traditional 4-on-4 Survivor Series elimination match. We have Los Guerreros, Rey Mysterio, and Chris Benoit taking on Kurt Angle, Shelton Benjamin, Charlie Haas, and Rhino.
Okay, I like this. We're back. We're good. I like this. Tell me about it. Who's going over?
This is going to be a work rate match. This is going to be a clinic. Every single guy in this match can go. I understand some of you probably are wondering, why is Rhino in here? He's kind of the heavy. He has some history with some of the other guys in this match. Rhino, he's a big, imposing man. He's called the Beast. So I think that he adds some powerhouse to the match. He's able to maybe throw around guys like Ray and Chavo. He adds a little bit of, as I said, that muscle that's needed. You're going to see some pretty crazy stuff, some pretty crazy wrestling with Angle and Mysterio. Angle and Mysterio, of course, in my mind, had one of the greatest opens in the history of wrestling pay-per-views back in 2002. So you're going to see a lot of great chemistry with Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas against the Guerreros as well. Benoit is going to be a workhorse in here. I kind of see it going down to the core. I'd like to see it have Eddie and Benoit as the two survivors going up against Kurt Angle and Charlie Haas. I like that combination. We're going to see a lot of great back and forth with this. And then, of course, you're going to get Charlie Haas eliminated by the crippler crossface. Kurt Angle's then going to go on to have a clinic. He's going to go back and forth with both Chris Benoit and Eddie. Chris is going to get disqualified for holding on to a crippler crossface that he refused to break the hold of. The referee disqualifies him, and then it gets down to Angle and Eddie. We go back and forth with some pretty solid in-ring work. You're never going to get a better in-ring product than when these two guys were in the ring. And then ultimately, Angle's going to go over with the ankle lock after Eddie wasn't able to hold on anymore. And this is going to foreshadow the finish at WrestleMania 20, because when the next time you see Angle and Eddie in a match of any great importance, Eddie has figured out how to get himself out of the ankle lock.
I like it. I hate to say how much I like it, but I do. The only thing that I'm thinking is, I was thinking exactly what you said, is why is Rhino there? I can think of a few other people that may have been better. I get why you put him there, but you could have also thrown in, I don't know, Test could have been the muscle there. That's really my only complaint. Overall, I think you nailed that one, bud.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this one. I mean, I understand people are uncomfortable with Chris Benoit. I mean, you can't really go through this era and not have him in a match. I like the idea of him losing his cool. He has the history with Angle. So for him to put the crippler crossface on and then refuse to break it and then get disqualified, I like that spot, because so many times, you have the count of 5 for the rope break, and then the referee doesn't do it. One of my biggest gripes with wrestling today is that the rules don't get followed, and a lot of times rules just get blatantly broken in front of referees and nothing happens. So I kind of like the idea of going old school here and actually having someone disqualified for not breaking a hold. And then, of course, as I said, you get the the Eddie and Kurt stuff at the end, which I think would just be a barn burner and again foreshadow the WrestleMania 20 stuff. You have to remember, Survivor Series is also on the road to WrestleMania a lot of times. They start the slow burn. They start to plant seeds at Survivor Series for Mania. So I kind of like where this one ended.
Yeah, totally. The only thing that I said, like I said, I might take Rhino out. I can also put a William Regal in there. You get a bit more of a technician, but you don't have the man beast in there to throw people around. So you're kind of going one of two ways. But like I said, I think you nailed this one, dude.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. That's pretty
All
much
right,
all.
well, on to the next. Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, that's pretty much all I got on that one. I think we're gonna give that one a check mark.
Beautiful. On to the next one. We have Team Bischoff, which is Chris Jericho, Christian, Mark, Mark Henry, Randy Orton, and Scott Steiner, defeating Team Austin of Booker T, the Dudley Boys, Rob Van Dam, and Shawn Michaels. I'm
Okay,
assuming this one is completely torn apart.
so this one actually is not the next match that I have on my card. So maybe what we'll do is
Okay.
we'll do
Okay.
that we'll do that match next, and then I'll switch them around, and I'll put the other match. I'll put this match I was going to have next. I'll have that one on after this one. So let's do this one since you already listed all the names and participants. So Team Austin versus Team Bischoff. I have completely ripped this one apart. I have Austin's team consisting of HBK, Goldberg, Mick Foley, and Rob Van Dam. And they're going to take on Bischoff's team of Evolution, Triple H, Randy Orton, Batista, and Ric Flair. So this is amalgamating feuds while keeping the main event and keeping the theme of the match the same. Evolution would be much better off with Bischoff being the solo GM. So they were all too happy to go in and be Bischoff's heavies for this. Austin enlists the help of old allies and foes alike to fight on his behalf. After a grueling match with Foley being eliminated by Orton and Goldberg eliminated by Triple H, we come down to a bloody HBK solo, not too dissimilar from what happened in the actual match. He's seemingly going to make a miraculous comeback when the recently eliminated Goldberg mistakenly spears Shawn and Triple H moved out of the way just at the last second. Pedigree ensues and Evolution is declared the winner with Triple H and Orton as the sole survivors. This would set up the triple threat match at the next month's Armageddon with Triple H, Shawn Michaels, and Goldberg, and foreshadow the Royal Rumble main event where Shawn Michaels and Triple H had a hell of a match. And then, of course, Austin's going to return at WrestleMania 20 in a surprise segment when he interrupts an in-ring segment with Jesse Ventura and Bobby Heenan arguing about who the better color man was, ending with Jesse Ventura taking a stunner and Bobby and Austin drinking beer in the ring.
Okay, that was a lot to take in there. Jesus.
Well, people wanted details, so we're giving them detail.
Yeah, you sure did. I love the fact that you have Evolution just as a team. It also really, really just helps the fact that we don't have to see Triple H versus Goldberg at all on this card in a one-on-one. I respect that, and I appreciate it. I don't like Mick Foley on the team. I don't think we're at that point yet. Because the Madison Square Garden being thrown down the stairs, had that even happened yet, or had it just happened with Orton?
It happened back in June.
Oh June shit! So, all right, I didn't realize it was that far before.
Yeah.
I don't like the fact that Foley's in this because do we still get the Rock and Sock versus Evolution at Mania 20, or is that just completely off the cards too?
No, that's there still too. I just think that this is a good way of sort of heating up the feud a little bit, especially because it was such a slow burn. Like we'd seen Foley in Madison Square Garden with Orton, and then not a lot happened after that. So I kind of felt like to start heating it up again, you could get it started here and then still do some interaction at the Rumble. You can have Foley as a surprise entrant in the Rumble as well, just like we did in 2004. But just getting this match and having some Foley involvement keeps the fires and the flames stoked for the feud.
I get it. I like I said, I love the fact that your team Bischoff is Evolution. Your team Austin, I don't like it because I don't like Goldberg. I don't like Foley for the most part at this point in his career. Shawn Michaels, I get, and I'm not gonna lie, I forgot who your fourth one was.
RVD.
Oh yeah, and RVD is RVD. He's gonna be there whether we want him to or not. The guy could work, but I have always said that I think RVD is very overrated.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at this actual card here, I mean, I agree with what you're saying to an extent. It's a lesser of two evils for me. I mean, Goldberg versus Triple H, the matches were okay. I mean, Goldberg could have decent matches with certain opponents. I don't, his matches with Triple H were
No,
there.
no. I will not agree with that. Goldberg has never had a decent match in his entire life unless it was under 5 minutes and it was with Brock Lesnar. It's the only time. Goldberg is a danger in the ring, always has been, always will be the most overrated wrestler of all time. He is just I would rather sit down and watch Psycho Sid matches for 8 hours than to have to watch one Bill Goldberg match ever.
I am calling you on that the next time we're together.
100%, dude. You get 8 hours lined up, I'll gladly do that because I know I can just sit there and shit all over it, and you'll get a little pissed off at me, and I won't have to watch Goldberg. So it's kind of a win-win.
I think if we actually, I like Sid, but I think if we sat down to watch 8 hours of Sid matches, I don't think we would remember after hour 4. I think we'd be too drunk.
I don't even know if all of his matches lined up equal more than 4 hours, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the best of Sid, 15 minutes.
Can you imagine having to watch Psycho Sid versus Bill Goldberg multiple times? I'm pretty sure WCW made us do that at some point, but god damn, that sounds...
Yeah, 99. We had it at Halloween Havoc 99, and we had it at Mayhem 99 as well.
Oh, this is just upsetting that happened. I will never ever be on the Bill Goldberg train. I don't know why they keep bringing him back. I don't know why he was a champion in 2020. For God's sakes, retire, man. You're terrible.
Yeah, well, I think you can answer your own question on that one. He's got star power. He's got a marquee name. He's one of the guys from that era that can still be presentable in the ring. I understand what you're saying completely. I don't think he's as terrible as you do, but he's definitely not one of my favorites either. I do like his gimmick. I'll be honest with about that. I do enjoy his presentation, but no, he's never in favorites either.
In 2020, almost 2021, does anybody in North America still want to watch Bill Goldberg wrestle?
No comment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I listen. I think that what they've done with him, I think they've done a really good job with what they've done with him. Like that stuff he did with Ziggler at SummerSlam was pretty good. Obviously, the stuff that happened with Undertaker was horrible. Listen, I don't think we're going to agree on fundamentally. I agree with you that he's not the greatest worker in the world. Probably far from it. I don't think he's as bad as you think he is. But again, I do agree that he's definitely not one of my favorites, and I can take or leave him. Let's put it that way.
And he's just reckless. He's freaking reckless. He has injured how many people? He caused Bret Hart's career to be over.
Yeah,
enough said there.
Well, I mean, and for you, who doesn't even like Bret Hart? I mean, you still don't want to see somebody get injured or somebody lose their career in that kind of way. So, absolutely, I'm not going to argue with you. I mean, the guy has had some reckless moments. For sure he has. And that's not necessarily his fault either. I mean, he was put into a position where he was squashing guys left, right, and center. And a lot of times people wouldn't speak up. Or back in the day in WCW, he was the top guy. They didn't take the time to put him back into the power plant so he could become a more safe, sort of snug worker. There's a lot of blame to go around for the Goldberg situation.
Absolutely. And in 98, 99, you're 100% right. But even here in 2003, the man had all the opportunity to learn the fundamentals, to go and train and work, and he didn't.
But again, that's not his fault. That's Vince's fault. That's the WWE's fault. They were paying him, I think, somewhere around $1 million a year, or maybe a little north of that. They're not going to spend, they're not going to pay the guy $1 million plus a year to go to OVW. Now, maybe they should have if they had done that. Do you think he was going to do that at that point in his career?
No,
absolutely not.
I'm not saying go to. I'm not saying go to a developmental. I'm saying train on your own. Get some people to come and help you. Get a Brian Kendrick, who was with the company at the time, who is a fantastic worker and one of the better trainers now, to come over to your house. You probably got a ring, or you can get a ring. He can come over, teach you some fundamentals, and all of a sudden you're not kicking people in the goddamn sternum and head and everything like that and ending careers.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with you. I think that it's absolutely true what you're saying. He was, without question, one of the most popular stars of the 1990s, but he was also one of the most reckless for sure. And him that match he had with the Undertaker at the Super Showdown back in I think it was June of 2019. I mean, I watched that match live and I cringed. I enjoyed the potential of the match. Obviously, in 2019, it was a little past its prime, but I liked the idea of the match. And the match itself wasn't terrible up until that spot where Goldberg got concussed. But still, yeah, just
Isn't the match? It wasn't the match itself only like 4 or 5 minutes long. So
I
you
think
saying it wasn't terrible until that spot is saying, "Oh, the entrances were good."
no, like they were working pretty good for the first. I think it went about 8 or 9 minutes, and I think that the first 4 or 5 were pretty decent, and then from there, when Goldberg got his bell rung, it was just lights out. You could even see he couldn't even get up for Undertaker's chokeslam. He wasn't there, and I mean, so at that point as well, in a situation like that, like what do you do when you have your bell rung? You don't know what's going on. You have a concussion. That's not on solely on you either. That's on of other people too. So I understand you want to finish the match. That's the mentality. But when the guy has a concussion, he's just not responsive. You have to go home, and that's what they did with that chokeslam. But they shouldn't have tried the jackhammer spot first.
Yeah, we're never going to see eye to eye on Bill Goldberg. We have similar points, but we also are very far apart in other areas.
No,
So
definitely.
I'm gonna move on. Like right before I got to this match, you said that there was another one beforehand. So why don't I just let you introduce it? Because we all know that the title match isn't there anymore. So I don't know how many you got left on your card. So why don't you just tell me what's up next there, bud?
So what did you have? Is that the title match was, just so we have a frame of reference for the audience? The title match was actually
Goldberg and Triple H, which you put them in the last one, so we know that match is not happening.
right. So the actual match that I have that I've booked here is I'm doing another 4-on-4 traditional Survivor Series match, which actually is a better order of booking now that I think of it. Have that kind of let me up segment in between the two main events. So thanks for that. We have Chris Jericho, Christian, and La Resistance versus Goldust, Booker T, and the Dudley Boys.
Oh, I hate you for this so much because I want to cheer for the goddamn Canadians, but you put Goldust on the card, man. Come on.
Yeah, I thought that you'd enjoy this. The story kind of writes itself with this. I mean, at this time, you had guys like Jericho and Christian. Obviously, they were having trouble with Steve Austin at that time. But of course, a lot of these tag teams were interchangeable at the time in terms of who was feuding with who. So it kind of makes sense that you put them all together and you have a fun little match. Obviously, you have the camaraderie with the Canadians, Chris Jericho, Christian, and La Resistance. I kind of see this match going in a sense that La Resistance gets a little bit full of themselves and they get big heads and they kind of start wanting to actually be the ones that are dictating the pace of the match. Eventually, La Resistance actually just walks out of the match, just like Bad News Brown used to do back in the day. They just decide that they've had enough and they take a hike.
I love it because I was such a Bad News Mark back in the day.
Yeah,
One question I have for you though: which iteration of La Resistance do we have here? Which two out of the three are there?
we have the originals. It's Sylvain Grenier and Rene Dupree.
Love it. Can't get better.
Yeah. So then from there, well, they've already eliminated a few people because they've been kind of running roughshod. We've lost Booker T, we've lost Devon Dudley here. Goldust is going to do a little bit of a comeback on Christian, but eventually he's going to succumb to the unprettier. And at the end of the match, we're going to have Bubba Ray Dudley actually holding court for his team, going up against Christian and Chris Jericho and going back and forth. And we're actually going to have Bubba Ray go over and be the sole survivor of his team. He's going to eliminate Christian. He's going to have a fun little back and forth with Jericho. And he's actually going to end up getting the pin on Jericho with a modified version of a diamond cutter. And I just like the idea of kind of elevating Bubba Ray. They were doing something of that Same thing back in 2002, and they did the brand split. Didn't really work, and then they put the Dudleys back together. I think it worked less so for Devon than it did for Bubba. I think he was actually getting over as a singles, but that Reverend Devon gimmick was just so horrible. So they put them back together. And I just sort of feel like I've always felt like Bubba Ray Dudley has some star power. I feel like he has some potential as a single star and a rather high quality, maybe mid to upper card heel or babyface. Maybe more of a heel, but in this situation, he would be the babyface. And I just kind of like the idea of giving him, giving him a nod.
So essentially, you were trying to do what TNA and Ring of Honor did with the whole Bully Ray character and putting him on a different level that he should have been at from the first place.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he wasn't going to break up with Devon. This was just kind of giving him a little, just a little pat on the back or whatever. I think that him at this point with Jericho as well, I don't think that Jericho doing a job to somebody like Bubba Ray was going to hurt him at all. I think it was fine. The match was what it was. It was a fun little match. So may as well just give Bubba, throw him a bone every once in a while, right?
I genuinely think you're trying to piss me off with this match, though, because you know my love of Goldust, and you have him on the winning team, but you don't have him be the survivor. I feel like this was done just to get me hot.
Not at all. Not at all. I did it. I think it's more exciting for the viewer if it's your guy that you're rooting for. And sometimes you see them have this valiant effort. He's fighting back and he's fighting back. Him and Bubba Ray Dudley. He's in the ring for quite a while. He does the hot tag to Bubba Ray. And then Bubba Ray is eliminating, Bubba Ray is there fighting off some of the other team members. But eventually Goldust gets eliminated. And I love the idea of Goldust in Texas, fighting the good fight, fighting the valiant fight, and then end up, it was just too much for him. I like that story. I don't think it devalues Goldust at all.
I think it would have been better if this was a Texas death match, though.
Fair. Yeah. What would that be? Would that be like a gold-plated Texas death match?
No, there'd be a white Ford Bronco in there too. Come on, we kind of saw one. Gave you an option there, and you didn't even take it. I'm kind of sad.
No, I didn't take it. Well, then again, I don't know. If we had done a gold-plated match, you probably would have just got it bronzed anyway.
Yeah, probably. All right, so I guess that leads us to what I'm assuming is your main event of Vince McMahon and The Undertaker in a Buried Alive match.
Yes, sir. Well, we are actually going to switch this up. We're going to keep the stip, Buried Alive, and we are going to do The Undertaker taking on Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. Now, these guys had a feud that had been going back and forth for quite some time. We had The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar in a biker chain match, I believe the month previous. And that was when Vince screwed over The Undertaker. Now, that didn't happen in this one.
I think it was 2 months previous. I think the month previous was Hell in a Cell.
I believe it was No Mercy 2003.
Which would have been October. So that was the Hell in a Cell.
Was that not in 2002?
Oh, shit. Never mind. You win.
Yes, I believe I do. So yeah, that was sort of the crux of the situation there. I think that when you look at that match, you're going to have Brock go over, but there's going to be a bit of controversy in the way he goes over. He's cheating all throughout the match, even though there's, the rules are kind of a little bit ephemeral here in this match. Like, you don't really know what you're going to do with some of these rules and stipulations. Anyways, the long and short of it is that Undertaker is granted one final championship match, and it's going to be going up against Brock Lesnar here in the Buried Alive. I really like the idea of this match restructured with The Undertaker going up against Brock Lesnar. So the way we're going to get to the conclusion of this match is Paul Heyman is going to return, and he's going to attack The Undertaker right as he's going to bury Lesnar. Now, we hadn't seen Heyman and Lesnar together since the previous year's Survivor Series when Heyman had turned on Lesnar for Big Show to go over and win the title. So we give Brock a few moments of time to gain his bearings. Then he F5s Taker into the grave to retain. Lesnar would lose the title to Eddie Guerrero at No Way Out a few months later when The Undertaker's music and lighting treatment hits and distracts Lesnar for Eddie to get the pin, setting up a return match with the Dead Man at WrestleMania 20. So Lesnar's still going to leave us for the NFL, but his last match is going to be doing the job to Taker at WrestleMania 20, and that sets up an incredible backstory for WrestleMania 30 10 years later.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Jay booked a worse main event than I did with Survivor Series 97. Congratulations, bud.
How is this worse?
Okay, I don't want to see Brock Lesnar and Taker in a buried alive match. I was done with that feud by this point. I liked the Mr. McMahon versus Taker feud.
Okay, you're gonna see. I can't see you right now, but you're gonna sit there with a straight face and tell me you'd rather see Vince and Taker versus Vince and Brock.
100% why, and this is why. Because when you lead to Mania 20, I wanted the Kane Undertaker match. That's who Undertaker should have come back as the Dead Man gimmick with, and it should have been Kane always. And
Why?
we don't get because they have a history together. Nobody cared about Brock Lesnar by WrestleMania 20.
That's my point. That why it makes him the perfect guy to do the job to Taker to. And then, of course, you're going to lose that Goldberg-Lesnar match, which was just god-awful. Wouldn't it make a lot more sense to get the Undertaker Deadman character, get his character over again, super strong right out of the gate? First time we'd seen it in quite a few years. You have him have Lesnar, who's been the guy running roughshod over the company for the last couple of years. You have him come out and have him do the job? That makes way more sense to me.
I don't like it because I really like the Vince Taker storyline. I liked having Vince in a buried alive match and the thought that we might get him buried alive. We didn't. We know that. But I like the fact that as a fan, you were like, oh shit, Vince McMahon potentially could, I guess for lack of a better term, die tonight because it's wrestling and we're suspending all reality for it. But no, I don't want to see Lesnar and Taker in a buried alive match. I don't like Lesnar in stip matches. He is too much of a badass. And so's Taker for that matter. But I don't want Lesnar in these stupid stipulation matches. He's going to go out there, he's going to beat the hell out of somebody, and he's going to leave. That's what he does.
Yeah, but I think you're thinking of Brock Lesnar today. Brock Lesnar of 2003 is much different than Brock Lesnar of 2020, 2012, 2015. The Brock Lesnar that came back from UFC is a much different Brock Lesnar than the one we saw in 2003.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not disagreeing that. But even back in 2003, he was still just showing up, beating up people, and leaving. That's what he always kind of has done, unless it's a Kurt Angle where they could actually put on a wrestling clinic. Him and Taker are not going to put on a clinic. They're going to beat up people, which I don't need to see that. I'd rather see Vince McMahon getting his ass kicked than watching Brock Lesnar put on a match with Taker. If I'm watching a buried alive match, I'm not looking for a catch stand type match. I'm looking to see somebody get the shit kicked out of them, and somebody that I want to see get the shit kicked out of them, which was not at that time.
Yeah, well, I understand what you're saying here, and I kind of get what you're saying with the stip. But at the same time, I feel like if you were going to have a Brock Lesnar do stip matches, this would have been the Brock Lesnar to do it. I don't want to see 2020 Brock Lesnar going up in a stip match. I just think that this would have been the time to do it. I think it made a lot of sense. I definitely think that the way I booked it here with the back and forth, especially leading into the history that these guys are going to have in the future, I think it sets up such a beautiful story going back. And then when we get back to Undertaker and Lesnar, say 10 years later, however long it's going to be, I think it just ties up so nicely the feud. It really adds a lot of rich coloring to their feud and to their rivalry. So, and I love the fact that Heyman comes back and he's the one that swerves, and nobody's going to expect that. So, I don't know. I just think that I didn't think that the Taker Vince match was all that bad. I do agree with you, but I also think that Vince was a little overexposed in this era too. He was wrestling pretty frequently. We had just seen him do that match with Hogan at WrestleMania. Then, of course, the month previous with Stephanie. I think he wrestled a few times in the summertime as well. I just felt
Yeah,
like Vince.
he wrestled Zach Gowen at, I think, Vengeance.
Yeah, that's right. Vengeance. I just think that the Vince character needed a little break here. We'd seen so much of him during the Attitude Era, and then they were trying to kind of grasp at straws here to figure out who his next great foil was going to be. Because Steve Austin, and to an extent, The Rock was as well, but mainly Austin, obviously. So I sort of think that Vince's character needed a bit of a break.
Yeah, I mean, that's your opinion. I think it's wrong, but that's why we do this show.
Yeah. Well, so you would have just kept everything as is, or how would you have rebooked this match?
Honestly, I don't think I would have touched this match because I liked everything that happened in it. I liked that the following Friday, or when was SmackDown airing at this time? Thursdays or Fridays? The following SmackDown, you had The Undertaker's funeral given by Kane. Like, I thought everything about it was fantastic. You're not going to see Brock Lesnar giving a funeral, plain and simple.
With him and Heyman, maybe you would.
Don't throw Heyman at me. You know I'm a bit of a Heyman mark, but I still hate it.
My point too
I still
is
hate it.
that's the other thing too that you have to think of as well is now he's realigned with Heyman, so you're going to see a lot more. Obviously Heyman's going to be cutting the majority of the promos, being the majority of the mouthpiece for the tandem. So for them to go forward and just imagine the incredibly scathing promos that he would be throwing towards Taker all along until Undertaker returns, I just think that I think it makes a lot of sense. I get why you don't like it. I'm actually, to tell you the truth, I'm really surprised at how much you enjoyed the Undertaker Kane match at Mania. Like, I didn't think it was bad, but I don't know. Like, I think
Hold on. I never once said that I really enjoyed the match. I said that Kane was the perfect opponent for him because of all the history that they had. There was dead man history with Kane. There's no dead man history with Brock Lesnar. There's American badass history with Brock Lesnar, and that's it.
So maybe that's where you go to then. That's the thing. So they've had this rivalry going back and forth, and Undertaker is like, I've had enough of this guy. I'm just going to come back as my badass Undertaker dead man gimmick. I mean, badass in the sense that he's just a bad man. I'm not singing the Rikishi song. And
I just love how much you keep trailing into different things right now. It's really humorous to me.
No, he comes back as the definitive dead man character, and he buries Brock Lesnar, buries him in the middle of Madison Square Garden with a tombstone.
Okay, let me ask you this: 10 years down the road, does Lesnar still end the streak, or are we not doing that?
I don't know. I didn't go that far. That's going to be one. That particular card, I think WrestleMania 30 is going to be one that we're going to have to do at some point, because there's a lot about that show that I would change. And I don't know where I sit on that. I really don't. I go back and forth on my opinion about the Taker streak ending.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And like you said, that's a completely different show. We'll talk about that somewhere down the line.
Absolutely.
Well, overall, are you happy with your rebooking?
Yeah, I think it was pretty good. I mean, we had some pretty interesting ones that we disagreed on. I was actually surprised at the ones we disagreed on. I thought for sure that you would be more happy with more pleased rather with the main event. I'm actually a little stunned right now that you really like the Vince and Undertaker match, as well as the finish with Kane. So very interesting indeed.
Like I said, I'm genuinely pissed off at the fact that of all people you're bringing out a Texas death match for is Kane and Shane. I will never ever forgive you for that one.
Do you remember back in the day when we used to sit, like, sometimes we'd go out and have like a couple of pints and maybe a couple shots, and we used to like book our ultimate 10 match card of all time, and there was
always a Texas death match on there from both of us. Yes,
there was always one. Yes, and mine.
And never was it Kane and Shane McMahon. It was usually Terry Funk, I think, was always in it for both of us.
I wasn't sure if you were going to say Terry Funk or Terry Runnels. I'm glad you said Terry Funk.
No comment on that one, but you don't even deserve it.
Okay, that's really sweet. Thanks so much.
But yes,
All
I
right,
do
well,
remember our 10 match card rebookings back in the days of being able to sit at a bar with a pal.
yeah, and me.
And Jay. Well, I think that puts a bow on this card for us, though. Unless you have
Yeah.
anything else to say about it.
No, I'm just going to go over it real quick. Just reiterate the rebooking real quick for everybody here, and so that way we can just bookend everything here for you. So the first match, we have a traditional 4-on-4 Survivor Series elimination match. Cena, Bradshaw, London, and Kendrick taking on Big Show, Mark Henry, Jamie Noble, and Tajiri. Cena's going to get the pin there. We have Jacqueline going up against Molly Holly. Career versus championship. We have Jacqueline getting the pin on that one. Shane versus Kane in a Texas death match. We're going to have Kane go over. Los Guerreros.
Unforgivable.
No, that's not the pay-per-view. It's Survivor Series, pal, not Unforgiven. Los Guerreros, Rey Mysterio, and Chris Benoit versus Kurt Angle, Shelton Benjamin, Charlie Haas, and Rhino. We have Kurt Angle going over there with the ankle lock on Eddie. Chris Jericho, Christian, La Resistance going up against Goldust, Booker T, and the Dudley Boys. And we've got Bubba Ray Dudley being the sole survivor, and he's going to do the honors with Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho is going to take the fall with a modified diamond cutter. Then, of course, we have the Austin versus Bischoff, HBK, Goldberg, Mike Foley, and RVD taking on Evolution, Triple H, Randy Orton, Batista, and Ric Flair. And we have Triple H, of course, going over as he pedigrees Shawn Michaels right after he was accidentally speared by Goldberg. And then last but not least, we have The Undertaker going up against Brock Lesnar in a Buried Alive match for the WWE Championship. And Lesnar is going to get the win when he F5s the Undertaker back into the grave after Heyman returns and swerves The Undertaker and helps Brock retain his title. So that's where we sit on this particular card and this particular event. We have rebooked it. Rather, I've rebooked it. We've had some hits. We've had some misses. But I think we had a pretty fun rebook, all things considered. What do you think, pal?
I think we completely did what we set out to do here, and you rebooked it and pissed me off, which, what else could you ask for, right?
Yeah, but you're kind of an angry person anyway, so.
I'm a jolly motherfucker 9 times out of 10. You just catch me on odd days, okay?
Sorry, can you repeat that in the exact same tone?
I'm a jolly motherfucker. All right.
I think we need to write a Christmas Carol, and that's what it should be. That's the title of it.
Yeah, how about you just tell this jolly goddamn man what he's got to rebook next week? Because I cannot wait to torment you. What are you going to give me?
Well, I think you're going to. I don't think you're going to be as jolly after I tell you what you're rebooking next week. Next week, my friends, you are rebooking WWE Cyber Sunday 2006.
Every match will be a Texas death match by the end of it.
I am looking forward to it very much so. I hope that is the case. I don't think that it will be, but I like that you are trying to get my goat right now.
Well, on that note, kids, I think that is it for us tonight. So if Jay has nothing else to say, I would just like to sign off. On behalf of Jay, I am Tyrone. Thank you for listening to Good Friends, Better Enemies.
Oh, and don't be afraid to check out our social media platform.
Oh, shit, that's absolutely true. On Instagram, you can find us at good_enemies, and on Twitter, we are good_enemies. Follow us, like us, leave us comments, tell us how much we suck. We can't wait.
And on that note, we will continue to be good friends and better enemies.
Bye.